The official incident report for transit vessel Vreden's Hall, Cargo Manifest Run 714, filed with the Colonial Transport Authority under my name, Sergeant Major Darius Kowalski, Handler-Corps Auxiliary, reads as follows. Lied boarding attempt by 4-member Kaveth Interdiction Unit. Frame 7 access corridor, resolved without crew injury or cargo loss. Boarding unit failed to proceed beyond the access point. Investigation ongoing. That's the whole report. I've been asked by 3 separate parties, the Transport Authority, the Kaveth Diplomatic Consulate, and one very confused insurance adjuster, to elaborate. I keep telling all of them the same thing. There is nothing to elaborate on. Report is complete. What they want me to add is a description of what happened in that corridor. I'm not going to do that, because I wasn't there. And Britta is a dog. She is, specifically, a 7-year-old brindle English Mastiff, 142 pounds on a good day, slightly more after a meal. She has a gray muzzle now, which she has been growing since she was 4, and which I told her at the time made her look distinguished. She did not respond to this assessment. She rarely responds to anything that isn't kibble, a walk, or a sleeping infant. Off-duty default state is horizontal. Chin on her front paws. Eyes half open in the way that means she is technically awake but uninterested in the information. She came aboard the Vreden's Hall because I came aboard the Vreden's Hall, and where I go, she goes. This is not a regulation I wrote. It is a fact that preceded the regulation. Handler-Corps assigns us in pairs. The Corps does not, technically speaking, assign Britta to civilian cargo transports. I was assigned as a routine escort for a crate of agricultural biologicals that required a handler signature at every checkpoint. Britta was assigned to me. The distinction is meaningful only to people who have never met Britta. Vreden's Hall was not a warship. It was a fat, slow, honest working vessel, a cylinder of pressurized corridors and cargo bays running between the outer colonies and relay station Kendra, a route so thoroughly unglamorous that pirates rarely bothered with it. The cargo was mostly seed stock, machine parts, and processed nutrients. The passengers were 61 colonist families, 3 surveyors, 2 agricultural technicians, 1 schoolteacher, and whatever I was. The passenger berths occupied deck 3, midship. The nursery bunk bay was at the end of the port corridor. 6 collapsible cribs bolted to the bulkhead, a fold-down chair, and a hand-lettered sign taped to the door that read, "Quiet please" in 6 languages. 4 infants slept there on any given ship night, tated in by their parents so the adults could sleep in shifts. I don't know who put the sign up. It was already there when we boarded. Found the nursery on day 2. I was not watching her closely enough, which is a failure of supervision I acknowledge freely. She is a large dog. She does not move quietly. She also does not require my permission to decide something. I heard her from the galley. The particular sound of 142 pounds of dog settling onto a hard deck with a low, businesslike exhale. And when I followed the sound, she was already in the corridor outside the nursery door, chin on her paws, not going in, not doing anything, just present. One of the infants had been fussing, according to the parents in the berth opposite. It had stopped. Told her to come. She looked at me, I told her again. She returned her gaze to the corridor ahead. That was day 2. By day 5, the nursery corridor was Britta's patrol route, her rest post, and her primary object of professional interest. Parents stopped being startled by her. The schoolteacher, a woman named Obasi, who had initially been reluctant to share a corridor with what she described as the largest dog I have ever seen in an enclosed space, had taken to sitting beside Britta in the fold-down chair with a cup of tea, marking lesson plans. Nobody asked me to remove Britta. Nobody complained. The sign that said, "Quiet please," had been joined by a second sign, also hand-lettered. That said Mastiff on duty. I did not put that one up either. The Kaveth corvette caught us on ship night 7, between relay point 9 and the Kendra approach lane. They hit us with a broad spectrum power interrupt first. Standard Kaveth interdiction, designed to kill weapons systems and corridor cameras before the breach. It worked. Emergency lighting came on, red, low. I was in the hold on deck 5, doing a check on the agricultural crate, when the ship lurched and the lights went wrong. I had a hand torch and a sidearm and I knew where Britta was. And those 3 facts, in that order, were my entire operational picture for the first 4 minutes. The Kaveth are methodical. They don't rush. They cut power. They wait 60 seconds for the crew to panic. And then they send a 4-unit breach team through the Frame 7 access hatch, a maintenance port. On the port side, deck 3, 30 meters from the passenger berths. I learned this afterward from the ship's emergency logs, which have their own backup power and are not affected by the broad spectrum interrupt. The Kaveth know about the backup logs. They don't worry about backup logs, because ordinarily, there is nothing in a Frame 7 corridor at ship night except bulkhead. They entered at 02, ship time, moving in standard 2 and 2 formation. The emergency lighting was red and very dim. The corridor was 40 meters long, straight, with the nursery bunk bay door at the far end. At 02 fort and some seconds, the logs record a sound. The Kaveth are not cowards. They are professional, experienced, and they have boarded a great many ships. They have encountered a great many things in corridors. I have read their debriefing transcripts. The ones the diplomatic consulate eventually shared with the transport authority, because the consulate wanted it on record that the incident was not a violation of the Kaveth interdiction protocols, but rather an encounter with an unregistered biological hazard not disclosed in the vessel's manifest. This is, diplomatically speaking, a way of saying their team was in that corridor for less than 90 seconds before it was back at the Frame 7 hatch, requesting emergency extraction. 4 members went in, 4 members came out. One of them had to be helped. The logs don't show what they saw, because the camera was dark. They show timestamps and they show the door. I reached deck 3T at 02:19. The emergency lighting was still red. Britta was in the corridor, place, chin on her paws, eyes half open. The nursery bunk bay door was closed. Behind it, one of the infants was making the small, snuffling, half-awake sounds of a child who had been very briefly disturbed and was already going back to sleep. The corridor smelled like a corridor. Britta looked up at me when I came around the corner. Not urgently, the way she looks at me when I'm late with breakfast. Patient, mildly inconvenienced, willing to wait. I checked the nursery. 4 sleeping children. Checked the corridor. Nothing. Checked Britta. She lowered her chin back onto her paws. I sat down on the deck beside her and put my back against the bulkhead, and we waited for the all clear, together. The Kaveth team reboarded their corvette and were gone before the Vreden's Hall's emergency systems came back online. The Frame 7 hatch was sealed from the inside. The only sign they'd been aboard at all was a single small scorch mark on the deck near the access point, which maintenance sealed over the following morning. The consulate's position, as I said, is unregistered biological hazard. Transport Authority wants to know why I didn't list Britta on the manifest under Auxiliary Working Animal, Category 7, which I will admit is a paperwork failure on my part, and one I've accepted the associated fine for. The insurance adjuster wanted to know the replacement value of whatever I had in that corridor. I told him she was not replaceable, and the conversation ended there. What I told all 3 of them, when they pressed me for more than the report contained, was the same thing. She was just watching the babies. Britta is currently asleep on a folded cargo tarp in the Vreden's Hall's hold, waiting for our next run. She gets the tarp because she has earned the tarp. She gets the kibble because she has always gotten the kibble. She gets the corridor because she decided, on day 2 of a 9-day run, that the corridor needed watching and nobody else was going to do it. The Kaveth team, when they were debriefed, described what they encountered as a ground-level darkness that did not move, but was aware of them. One of them described having had, in his own words, a very clear and immediate understanding that the thing at the end of the corridor had already decided the outcome and was simply waiting on them to accept it. They are experienced. They recognized what they were looking at. It was a dog. It was 142 pounds, 7 years old, brindle coat going gray at the muzzle, lying chin down on a cold deck in red emergency lighting, not bothering to stand up. She did not have to. The Kaveth team has been doing this for 11 years across 7 transit lanes. They have boarded freighters, diplomatic couriers, colony ships, and at least one vessel that was carrying something that fought back. They are not easily discouraged. They did not come back down that corridor. That is the whole report.